It's about to start. We'll talk about code or whatever we'll talk about today. It's about to start, so please hang tight while I check that everything is okay. Sound check, camera check, lights check. How's my hair? Oh, wait, I don't have any hair. Maybe put some pants on and I am good to go. So get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Get ready wherever you are, 'cause this stream is about to start. Hello everyone and welcome to the second day of Advent of Code, and this time I have not only David with me, other side, but also Mark. Hello, how are you all doing?
Very good, very good.
Yeah, thank
Excited.
Yeah, I am. I'm living the dream here. This is exactly what I wanted, to bring people together and write code. And the second day is out. The second puzzle is out. And this time around, no one solved it beforehand, right?
Correct.
All right. So let's dive in.
Okay.
And
Are you sharing your screen?
Yeah, right.
Where should I read the...
I will share my screen
got it.
here.
Okay.
How about that?
Cool.
All right. A cube conundrum. You are launched high into the atmosphere. The apex of your trajectory just barely reaches the surface of a large island floating in the sky. You gently land in a fluffy pile of leaves. How comfy. It's quite cold, but you don't see much snow. An elf runs over to greet you. It is quite cold indeed. It is much colder than it was supposed to be here in Portugal. The elf explains that you've arrived at Snow Island and apologizes for the lack of snow. He'll be happy to explain the situation, but it's a bit of a walk, so you have some time. They don't get many visitors up here. Would you like to play a game in the meantime? Yes, I would like to play a game. As you walk, the elf shows you a small bag and some cubes, which are either red, green, or blue. Each time you play this game, he will hide a secret number of cubes of each color in the bag. Ooh, I'm starting to feel some combinatorics here. David and I are gonna have a good time because, like I said, when he visited me, we spent like 2 days working on this much more complicated puzzle that had all to do with combinatorics, and yeah, we have our arrangements and combinations and permutations all sorted out, if you see what I mean. And your goal is to figure out information about the number of cubes. To get information, once a bag has been loaded with cubes, the elf will reach into the bag, grab a handful of random cubes, show them to you, and then put them back in the bag. He will do this a few times per game. You play several games and record information from each game, your puzzle input. Each game is listed with its ID number. Like, I guess this is L1. The font here is kind of tricky, but is this... No, this is 11.
Yeah,
Okay.
11.
Like the 11 in game 11. Okay. Followed by a semicolon separated list of subsets of cubes that were revealed in the bag, like 3 red. So it's not really... the list is separated by semicolons, and then each element in the list is in and of itself a list of colors of cubes. So I don't really get it, as in each game will have multiple draws? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's have a look at the example. So,
For example, the record of a few games might look like this. And then on one game you draw this, and then you put it back in the bag, and then you draw that, and then you put it back in the bag, and you draw this. I think that this is how it goes.
Yes, so he's doing a few draws in each game.
And
So I think from the looks of it, at the very least, you can say that the maximum number drawn gives you a clue of that there's at least that number in the bag.
yes,
So on
the
game
pigeonhole
one,
principle,
there's
yeah.
there's at least 6 blue, there's at least 4 red, and
And-
at least 2 green in the bag.
Between games, are we resetting? Are we coming up with a new configuration of cubes, or all of these games are with the same bag and with the same cubes? I don't think I understand that.
I think each game is different.
Each
Yeah,
time
each
you
time you
play
play
this
game,
game, so I guess each one of these lines, he will hide a secret number of cubes. So I think that the game is reset every time, and that's the point of separating multiple lines, because there will be one configuration of cubes, and then you draw multiple times. And then you reset the game, another configuration of cubes, and then you play the game a second time with multiple draws. I think that that's how it goes. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. In game 1, 3 sets of cubes are revealed from the bag. So 3 draws, and then put back again. Okay. The first set is 3 blues, 4 reds. The second set is 1 red, 2 greens, and 6 blues. And the third set is only 2 greens. The elf would first like to know which games would have been possible if the bag contained only 12 reds, 13 greens, and 14 blues.
one thing I don't understand is what's the semicolon?
That's
the end?
separating the draws. So the elf will put a certain amount of cubes in the bag, and then it will
okay.
draw 3 blues, 4 reds, put them back in the
Yeah.
bag, draw
Yeah.
1 red, 2 greens, 6 blues, put them back in the bag, draw 2 greens, and then reset. So take all the cubes out, put an arbitrary number of cubes back in, play the game again. I think that that's
it.
how it goes.
Right, so each game is independent bags.
Independent bags per line, but
Yeah.
independent draws separated by semicolons.
Makes sense.
And in the example above, games 1, 2, and 5 would have been possible if the bag had been loaded with that configuration. Because if you need to draw 16 blues, for instance, you can't with only 14 cubes. So the question is, what games would have been possible? Number 4 would not have been possible, and the number 3 would not have been possible because you needed to draw 20 reds, and you
Yeah.
won't only have 12 of them. Got it. I feel like I am trying to understand things too early because I think that they're going to spell it out now.
Yeah.
However, game 3 would have been impossible because of the reds, and similarly, game 4 would have been impossible because of the blues. If you add up the IDs of the games that would have been possible, you get 8. That's 1 plus 2 plus 5. Determine which games would have been possible if the bag had been loaded with only 12 reds, 13 greens, and 14 blues. What is the sum of the IDs of those games? Okay.
Seems like mostly a parsing problem.
Yeah, in the sense that you will have to do some string manipulation to get the numbers out. And then it
Yeah.
is a matter of, well, is this number greater than the other number? It's not terribly
Yeah.
complicated. It's not rocket science. But before we start, we need to set up a shared live session between the three of us. I will go ahead and start pressing buttons here while you help me decide what you want to do to make this even more fun. Do you want to try a different programming language, or do you want to try some constraint, like we can only write functions of 3 lines at most, or something like that? What are your thoughts?
Did you say you wrote it in .NET, Mark, yesterday?
Yeah, so I usually solve these in C#. So it's my main programming language. I have in previous years done them in other languages. I've done them in JavaScript and F#. I go fastest in C# because I know it.
C# could be fun. I don't know if that's a bit too high risk, Leandro, but seeing as we have an expert with us, we can try that.
I think we should do C#, yes. And
Okay.
maybe it would be better if Mark created a live share, because I don't have the necessary tools to compile and run. Do you think you can do that for us, Mark? Do you think that you can create a live share session in Visual Studio Code? Maybe you use Visual Studio, but Visual Studio Code is nice for us to be able to edit the code and then you compile and build in Visual Studio. Do you think you can do that?
Yeah, no problem. Let's see if I can. Is there a particular extension?
Oh yeah, right.
It's built in now.
Yeah, I did use it years ago, but
But you might need to install it. I'm not sure. I think they made it part of the system. But if you look at Leandro's screen, he's got it installed. I guess it's called Live Share.
Yeah, right. We can even do this differently. It's kind of janky, but I think it's perhaps the fastest to set up. I am going to create a live share, and then you can join. And Mark, you can even join with the browser if you don't want to go through the installation process. I suppose it's possible to do this in the browser. So I'm going to create a live share. We do this in the browser, in your side, and then you copy and paste into Visual Studio and compile and run. How about that?
Yeah, I'm just setting up live share in extension, so I might be able to join.
Okay, while he does that, maybe we discuss what do we predict how they're going to make this more complicated in part 2.
I thought that they were going to do something like how many possible games are there with, or how many possible draws are there with a certain combination of cubes, but it doesn't seem like they're going that way.
Yeah, I think it is going to. I think it will be something more like that. Like the constraints are now just like this is the maximum number of each cube, and it's going to. I reckon it will be something like just a more complex rule about the sum, maybe, of each of the games or something like that. So like instead of putting it back in, you're always taking it out. And so like...
I see what you mean. So if, for instance, back to this example, you draw 3 blues and 4 reds, you don't put them back. And then you draw 1 red and 2 greens and 6 blues. So now you need to take into account that the 3 blues and 4 reds that you took out, they will add to this 1 red and 6 blues. Oh, and they are also not in order. That's cute. The inputs are not always red, green, and blue. They're blue and red, or red and green and blue. They're not always RGB. They are sometimes GBR, for instance.
Yeah, and also there is going to be like, it's not always 1 digit. It's going to be like sometimes it's not. They didn't help us out and do 001 or.
Yeah, so maybe you said that this is going to be a fun parsing problem. If we do this with regular expressions, it is relatively straightforward. If we do this without regular expressions, and Mark said that he did yesterday's puzzles without regular expressions, how about we try and do this without regular expressions? Because then the problem gets a bit trickier. We will have to traverse the strings and, well, essentially implement a very simple and rudimentary regular expression engine, but that can be fun.
Definitely, but I don't think it will be so hard without regular expression. And I think it could get difficult with regular expressions as well, because I mean, unless you had multiple regular, you're not thinking just one master regular expression which just does
No,
a beautiful. Okay.
no. The idea I had was coming back to my language of choice for exemplifying things would be do my usual. Oh, I guess you were not there for when I was solving the 2021 puzzle to warm up, but I would split it by
I was
new
watching.
lines.
I was watching.
Ah, okay. And then I would filter each line so that if it is empty, it goes out. Now I only have the juicy lines and I can put as many new lines as I want. Then I would call this my lines. Then for each of the lines, which is now, for instance, this, I would get the game ID by taking my line and matching with game and then any number of digits, like so.
Yeah,
of course, I
that
am
makes
interested
sense.
in this group, so I'm gonna put parentheses there, and I typically name these things, so I'm gonna call this the game, and in this case, I'm trivially just getting the game out, but I think it reads nice this way, so I tend to use my groups with names. So that's my game ID. Now, I will need to get each of the draws separately. So I guess I will also get, after the column here, I will also get my draws. Which are just going to be the rest of the line. And now I don't have so trivial groups anymore. So I guess I'll call this my match. Or maybe even use the structuring assignment and call this the game ID and my draws. Then now the draws are supposed to be this part of the line. So I can do a for loop of red, green, and blue of, oh, it's not going to be that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to want to split on semicolons.
Yeah,
Okay.
like so. And I will also map with draw trim, just so I can get rid of this space here in the beginning and this space and so on. Doesn't really matter. But anyway, so now with my draws, I can get my red, which is again going to be a regular expression.
I guess you're not always going to have red, green, blue, but that's
Correct. So maybe
Yeah,
red
I was
will be.
wondering whether you could just parse, look for a number and then a string, and then turn that into a dictionary, or in JavaScript just an object.
Yeah.
If the key is blue and the value is 3.
Yeah.
The key is red.
That's quite elegant. You could
Can you say
also
that
do
again?
the-
I don't think I got that.
So with your regular expression, you're just looking for a digit followed by a string, and so you'll get multiple matches, and then you turn that into an object where the keys are the string and the values are the number.
You mean, oh, just in how you are building this match object, right?
But you're
So,
saying infer
yeah,
the string, like the word. It could just be word and then like name the word as the color kind of thing.
Ah, of course, yes, that makes sense. That's clever.
I also wonder if we could use, if we could somehow, would it ever be possible to do it in one regex with even though you've got the splitting of the strings, with the semicolons? And how
Yeah,
would,
if you want to go that route, then each of the draws is separated. It's a list of strings separated by commas. So I can, I guess I'll call this the cubes. And I split on the comma. And then the cube is now one of these. Well, I guess I will map and trim as well.
I guess this is looking a lot like how the C# implementation will look now.
Maybe I am using some. I don't know if is this allowed? Because if this is allowed, then it's relatively straightforward. But I was thinking of like iterating over characters and stuff like that. Really trying to come up with a makeshift regular expression engine. But yeah,
I'm sure C# has split. C# quite good.
Yeah, that's what I would use.
Ah, okay.
But usually a regex can return multiple matches, so you could have got it out with it like that. But I mean, this is fine as well. So if you split each cube and then you loop through each cube, yeah, then you could split on space again, and you've got a number and you've got a string.
Yes. So what we can do here is we can be really clever on this one. We are mapping over and trimming. So at this point, cubes is a list with this string and this string. So what we can do next is we can, besides just mapping, we can split on the space that is separating the number and the word. And then we can create a list, or actually we can just reverse. We can put the blue, that is the second element, in the beginning. So we just reverse this list. And then we now have a list that looks like this. And with this shape of list, you can create an object. So the result...
Object from entries.
Oh, thanks. Yes. I was going to write it the wrong way. So that's cute.
Maybe regex would be easier to read in the end.
All right.
Okay, nice. Did you manage to get the live share going, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the live share. I'm not seeing your unsaved file.
Ah, wait, okay. Yeah, we learned yesterday that unsaved buffers don't show up, but let's discard this and start everything in C#.
Wait, hold on. Did you share? I thought it was you sharing, Mark. No.
I can do a share if you want me to do. Do you want me to start a share?
I don't know. What do you think, Leandro? I think that would make sense. No.
Yeah, Mark, do whatever will make it easier for you to compile and run the code that we write.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me try. Let me try just doing this as a.
Well, my question was, Leandro, can you think of a way of parsing the entire line in one regex?
If you are gonna do that, you're gonna have multiple results, multiple matches. And then I say, yeah, probably. Probably you can do a whole line with a singular regular expression.
That'd be an interesting challenge.
Well,
so I wouldn't know where to start with that, really. With the whole like separation.
Yeah, you would end up with nested groups, right? If we come back to the input here, we do have.
Does it come back to context-free languages?
No, not quite, I don't think. You will need to have nested groups because this the things that are separated by semicolons, so the draws are one structure that you care about. And within that structure, there is another structure that you care about, which is each of the cubes in the draw. So you will need nested groups, and I don't know how they work, but it's still all regular. It is still all a regular language, I think. But I may be wrong on this. My intuition tells me that there isn't any kind of like... Okay, so the thing that I talked about yesterday about the matching parentheses and how that is not a regular language, that's a context-free language. The reason is that there is some, let's say, communication between parts of the string. So when you put an open parens, the close parens may be way down the line, because there may be like multiple parentheses in between. So maybe I open parens and here is the closing parens, but then I put a lot of parentheses in between. So now now this is no longer a regular language because you need to remember what you have seen way down the line. Intuitively speaking, that is the reason why this is not a regular language. I think it's related to something called the pumping lemma, if you want to read more into this. And in this, I don't see anything like that. You can neatly break apart the problem of this into the constituents and then drill down from there. So there is no like communication at a distance, so to speak. So I think that could be done with a regular expression as long as the regular expression engine can deal with nested groups, which I think that it's possible in some engines. Anyway, Mark, what do you have to say? Do you have a...
I'm just trying to work out how I allow you to join.
Well, I can help with that. So, well, first of all, there is already a live share session between all of us, I think. You have joined, right?
So I joined the first one and then I posted a link and David was trying to join that.
Okay, so maybe what I need to do is...
All right, maybe, which one did you join? Did you join the first one, David?
No, I'm waiting to join yours, yeah. I clicked on your last link.
I am clicking on yours now. I'm gonna switch to this view for the stream.
If you go to the live share like portion, does it like give you an option?
So I just seeing participants 0.
Well, I see a live share session, a live share workspace. I'm even
okay, I'm gonna try
now.
Ah, Leandro's in.
Yeah.
I'll just copy that link again. I'm sure it's the same link.
I'm even requesting read-write access here. So yeah, I guess I can come back to this view because I think we managed to set this up. And there is a program.cs file. I see that. I think we are good to go.
Yeah, it was behaving a bit weirdly, to be honest. I just created what I've done. So interested to see what you see when I click around.
Yeah, I see your cursor. It's super cool. I can even see this pin here on the upper right. I can follow people. So I can, as you move around between files, my cursor will go with you. I can see the terminal below.
Okay, for some reason my project wasn't compiling. The Hello World wasn't compiling, so I made another test project, but it's fixed itself now. So, okay. Oh, that's interesting. We've got 2.
All right, we should be good to go. Mark, you are driving.
Okay, so just to tell you what I've got here, this is just a very simple C# project. You've got, click on the right window. You've got the project file. Does that not show up?
I see that.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, it's just a little bit delayed. Got the project file, which just says that we're building an executable. We're using .NET 8, and at the moment it's hello world. So we can run this with .NET Run in the command line like that. So what I'll typically do.
When you are writing your C#, do you usually write the CS proj by hand, or do you go to Visual Studio? Not Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio.
Yeah, so what I can do is I can say .NET new console, and then that will just create a new project for me. And you can give it -O and the name of the folder, my folder. So that's how you'd create one of those. Visual Studio will create it as well. And in fact, if you've got the C# dev kit extensions in Visual Studio Code, I don't know if when I press the no, it doesn't show my command palette. Brilliant.
Right.
So what I've got here, let's just start off with the test input equals, and then there's a bunch of ways you can do multi-line strings in C#, but that's one of them. So I've got the test input there. And then what did we say we were going to do? So lines equals test input dot split. I think because I'm on page, we could call these games, couldn't we?
I already see something interesting. You are spelling the new line with \n, but I can see on the lower right on my Visual Studio Code, and our faces are kind of in front of it for the stream, but it's reading down here that the end of line sequence is the Windows end of line sequence, which is caret
yeah,
phi.
so it auto-completed for me there. I think I've got GitHub Copilot on, so it's going to auto-complete. So yeah, I would often do that in Windows. I think you can also say environment.newline, and then if I'm on Windows, I'm going to get carriage return line feeds. I'm on Linux, I'll get just new line. So we can do often I use something in .NET called link, which is very similar to what you were doing in JavaScript. You can sort of chain things together, so you can say .select, and that's essentially the same as map. And so often I try and solve these by just doing lots of mapping steps, but maybe because we're live streaming this, just to avoid confusion, I'll keep it as simple as possible. Okay, so the first thing we want to get out is the game number. And in fact, I think I don't know whether we could cheat and just say the game number is the line number, but I suppose we ought to be good and get.
That's a good question.
Can you see?
Let's have a look at the input.
Yeah, I'll take a look at the input real quick, and it seems to hold that the line number is the game number, but remember that we start counting by 1, not 0.
Yeah, that's a much better way.
I love it.
I'm not going to accept this, but if I press tab, this is what GitHub Copilot has suggested. Look at that. It's like just written a whole ton of code. I'm going to delete it because we got to solve this ourselves. But
But it's not bad.
Do you think that Copilot is aware of this problem already because it has been out for almost 6 hours?
No way. It's just reading the test input.
How does it know about the concept of rounds being separated by semicolons? That's spooky.
I know, that is a bit...
It's listening to us.
Weird.
At least it's getting the separator for the different colors. It's getting it wrong. It thinks that it's a space while it's actually a comma, but getting right the semicolon is very spooky.
Anyway, right, I'm going to delete that. And try not to let AI solve it for us. Right, so the game number will be
I+1.
so we've not actually got a indexer. I mean, you could just say n equals 0. I'm just wondering whether the simplest thing to do is game.split split on a space and then take the first index and then parse that to an integer, and then let's just
You could have two numbers, right?
yes, so this will split on space, and in fact, yeah, that's not going to work because I'm going to get 1 colon and it will complain. If I run that, it will throw a format exception.
And wait a second, I'm very curious about this. On line 10, you're saying split by a space and you're not putting quotes around the string. It's not a string. Is the space the default separator for split?
I thought I had put split by a space.
Ah, okay. Fair enough.
So yeah, this will throw an exception because I've got 1 colon.
Well, split by column first, then look at the first element, and then split by space.
And trim, I can trim the colon off the end.
Ah, that's cute. Does JavaScript have that? I don't think
It has
so.
Yes,
trim,
you can trim
but not with a...
certain characters off.
Yeah, you cannot specify which characters you want to trim from the string. It's always spaces. That I know. I'll check it.
Yeah, and in fact, probably what I should have done is split on the semicolon and then parts. The first part split on a space. Let's do that. Let's see if that works.
Nice.
And then, so the second part is the rest of the line. And now we're going to split that. So what was this called? Rounds. Parts 1.split.
That's Copilot's name, but yeah.
What was it called?
I was calling it draws, but that's
draws.
That's
yes,
probably
draws.
better. Your name is probably better.
Okay, so it hasn't read the problem. It's supposed to be draws, right? So each draw is
yeah.
So for each draw in draws, we want to
Split by comma.
so yeah, draw.split split by comma.
Are all like method names like Pascal case in?
Yes, yeah, that's the convention in .NET. It was where it diverged from Java. I know, does Java use Pascal? C# was I was a Java programmer back in 2000, and C# was very similar but had a few quirky differences.
No, in
Go
Java
is
it's camel case. You don't capitalize the first letter in the name of the method.
Yeah, but I think Go is the same as C#.
Okay, so we are splitting on comma, and then I'll call this cubes, shall I? And then for each cube in cube, and then cube, let's do some trimming, split on space.
Yeah.
And then, There is now string destructuring in C#. I can never remember the syntax, so they've only just added it. You might be able to do like something like that now. Autocomplete is getting in my way. Something like that, I think, is potentially a syntax that you can now do, which Python's had for ages, and I know JavaScript has got as well, but I can't remember the syntax off the top of my head there. Yeah, so I'll just give that. So the color is going to be, so we're going to use American color spelling. I always feel like you have to code in American, don't you?
How do you like when libraries provide actually both spellings? It's cute, but then again, if you are trying to search and replace.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah. So I mean,
it's a massive inconvenience that there are like more than one language in the world. I mean, like...
No, languages are fine. It's a massive inconvenience that there are time zones. If I could change anything about the human experience, it would be time zones.
Okay. Looking good.
We have got some output.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so what I'd imagined was you'd end up with a...
So I guess we just need to take the assumption and check that they're all valid now. So, like, if it's color red, is it less than the max red, etc.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we've so let's have a look at the problem.
I think I can write this. Let's see. I will start writing some C# here. You will see. It will be great. So these are the constraints. So I will call this var, and I will call this like max reds 12. Oh, no, semicolon. Yes, semicolon. And then max greens and max blues. And then 13 and 14. Sometimes I use multiple cursors when you wouldn't need them. Anyway, I wrote some C#. Yay! You take over now.
Something like that.
Yes, so we can do. What did you want to do? Did you want to do some, David?
Go on then. So if color is red, I'll stick to your... I don't know what this way of doing...
Yes, yeah, that's another... Well, that's from JavaScript. In JavaScript, weird things can happen if you put semi-opening braces on the different line.
Automatic semicolon insertion. I was beaten by that yesterday.
And count is...
so if it's less than max reds...
Or equal to, I think.
Correct. You can draw 6 red cubes out of 6 cubes.
What are you testing for? You're saying, is it impossible? If it's less than... If count is how many's in the bag, max reds is how many was drawn.
Is it okay? Like, is it okay?
So if max...
Oh.
Yeah, I think it.
You type really fast.
So how can I do?
Oh, is it giving you the?
Yeah, I've got Copilot installed as well.
Copilot as well, yeah. I think it's the other way around because
So I'm going to assume it's.
let me just read the.
How do you
Well,
want to
I
go
can
about
either
this? Do you
check
want to
this out
assume
or-
that it is valid until it isn't, or do you assume that it's invalid and then try and prove that it's actually valid?
So if we drew,
I'll
so if
assume
bag
that
is
it's.
only
I'll assume that it's valid until it isn't, which means I need to rewrite this. I'll change the condition in a sec, and then if it's okay, then we can like sum. And then
and then add the game number.
wherever game ID
Okay.
is. And then I just need to change this so this is invalid if the count is greater than the max res.
Yes. So you've pulled out more than.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess we just need to write the sum at the end.
Yep.
Oh, sum is not done in the right place.
Okay. So you can just do .NET run.
Oh, I can't do that. You take
can't do
over.
that.
You take over.
Okay.
I can't do it either. I tried.
Oh, I'll make the terminal. I've made the terminal read write for everyone.
Thank you.
I think it's to stop you.
I
stop
started
you doing,
typing and you started
format-
typing.
format my C drive.
Okay. One of my favorite
What's that
things to
like?
do when I get write access to someone else's terminal doesn't work on Windows, but I love to use the say
Rimraf.
command on Mac OS, because then the computer says something to the person. That's cute. All right. Oh, autocomplete is weird. It shows me one thing and it autocompletes with another. But I ran .NET Run and my sum is 33, and the correct result was 8.
Uh-oh. It must be an issue with my code.
How can we've even summed up to 33?
Oh, we are adding
We're
the
doing it in the drawers.
Yes, we are doing it in the
Get
draws. That's a
out.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just needs to move it one level down.
And you need to move the OK
Oh,
variable
yeah.
up, which I am already doing.
Yeah.
There.
Okay.
There.
Let's try that.
I will run it. I ran it. And it now says 8. Yay!
Nice. Okay, let's try the big input.
I am trying the big input now. I pasted the big input. I am running it. And the answer is 3099. That's the right answer, everyone. Good job.
Hey.
Good job.
I'm going to have to rewrite this now in Python so that I can get my gold star. Because I'm not installing C#.
Well, you can just type in the answer. That's the answer.
No, it's
Your,
different.
answer.
It's different inputs.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you've got to paste your personal. He makes different inputs for every person.
I didn't know that.
It's very clever.
That is clever. So at least,
There's,
even if you copy and paste from the internet, at least you have to have the environment to actually run this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a Reddit group for Advent of Code, and people post their solutions in all different languages, and it's amazing. I don't obviously look at it until I've solved it myself, but it'll make you cry when you see it. Like people who do it in one line of Perl, and
All right, so what's part 2?
do you want to jump back to the
Oh yeah, it needs to be me now.
show us part 2?
Yeah, it does.
All right. The elf says they've stopped producing snow because they aren't getting any water. He isn't sure why the water stopped. However, he can show you how to get to the water source to check it out for yourself. It's just up ahead. As you continue to walk, the elf poses a second question. In each game you played, what is the fewest number of cubes of each color that could have been in the bag to make the game possible? So that's just the maximum number for each color in each of the games. Okay, again, consider the example games from earlier. And in game 1, the game could have been played with as few as 4 reds, 2 greens, and 6 blues. If any color had even one fewer cube, the game would have been impossible, and so on and so forth. The power,
why would it have been impossible? Why fewer?
Well, if you only had 2 blues, you wouldn't be able to draw 3 of them.
Right.
Or
okay.
if you only had 5 blues, I guess, because in this draw you needed 6
Okay.
blues. So I guess we are kind of thinking backwards, right? You are given that the
Right.
game turned out
Okay.
like this. Please tell me
Right.
at least how many of each color there was.
Mm-hmm.
The pigeonhole principle.
Got it.
The power of a set of cubes is equal to the numbers of red, green, and blue cubes multiplied together. The power of the minimum set of cubes in game 1 is 48 because 4 times 2 is 8 and 8 times 6 is 48. If you know your multiplication tables, double check my work. In games 2 and 5, it was these numbers respectively. Adding up these 5 powers produces this number. So now our job is to, well, forget the max red, max green, and max blue. That's out of the picture. We are going to compute our max green, max red, and max blue by looking at the draws, multiplying max red, max green, max blue, and adding up the results. That's what I understand. Do you agree?
Yep, seems pretty straightforward, really. So.
Mm-hmm.
This one seems perhaps more straightforward than yesterday's because of the overlapping numbers spelled out. All right, so I will copy and paste the example input, and then we can get started. And maybe you want to copy and paste this file so that you can answer part 1 more easily later?
Maybe.
In fact, tell you what I'll do very quickly is source control, make a git repo, commit.
Oh, right, yeah, I'm gonna do the same. I'm gonna copy this into my own repository here.
Oh. I think I've got to do the .NET. What's it?
Yeah, it even has a template for git ignores.
Yes.
Cute. So I will ask some questions. I'm curious. In your daily usage of C#, do you go for command line, Visual Studio Code, or do you prefer to use Visual Studio proper and all the tools that come in that? So more of IDE workflow.
Yes, so it's interesting. Back in the day when I started on .NET, obviously was no Visual Studio Code, and when you did like Windows applications, so with GUIs, which had Windows Forms and WPF, Visual Studio had lots of tooling for that. However, the more .NET has gone to web development, so you're making APIs and so on, that kind of UI tooling isn't so necessary anymore. And I think a lot of people who program websites in .NET prefer Visual Studio Code. So this kind of in this weird situation where at work we've got both, but there's quite a lot of the developers will do most of their work in Visual Studio Code now. There's a few things that Visual Studio does better, but actually there's things that Visual Studio Code does better. I think it's a nicer interface.
Can you give us an example of something that is done better by each?
I think probably the integrated debugging is slightly better in Visual Studio. So you can look at all your different threads and memory usage, and maybe even some of the test tooling. So exploring your unit tests and running. I often have unit tests for my Advent of Code solutions, and so I'll just run individual tests. And with Advent of Code, some of them take a long time, so you don't want to run all of your tests. So I think, but there's extensions for just about everything in Visual Studio Code, so I'm sure that's better. So one thing Visual Studio Code is much better at is markdown editing. If you want to do your readmes, it's got much nicer markdown editing. It's just generally a cleaner setup. And the .NET command line that you can see we've been using to add git ignore files and so on means that you can do most things that you need to do quite easily in VS Code. And so even on the Microsoft team, because I quite often interact with the Microsoft product teams for Windows, Azure, and that kind of thing, a lot of them use Max and Visual Studio Code to write their C# code in.
Yeah, that's not surprising. It used to be the case that Microsoft was the largest or the best software development team outside of Apple for Macs. So the Office suite used to be the gold standard in user interfaces for Macs in terms of like how it was using the technologies for Cocoa or what have you. So it doesn't surprise me. Microsoft is really good at that. So where do you see this going? Because I remember, for instance, when Microsoft bought GitHub, it was written in the wall that Atom was going to go away. And it did eventually. They started by saying, no, we're going to keep Atom. It's great. But then everyone was, well, there is Visual Studio Code and Atom. They kind of overlap. One of them is going to win, and it's probably going to be Visual Studio Code. Do you see the same happening with Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code? Like at some point, one is going to win, and it's probably going to be Visual Studio Code?
Yeah, Microsoft get themselves into this situation a lot because they've also got it by buying GitHub. They bought a competitor to their own Azure DevOps. It used to be called TFS solution. So they've got two project management things, and so they've got two IDEs that are. I think the big gap that is never likely to be plugged is the UI. So if you're doing Windows UI, WPF, and I don't know if you've heard of MAUI, their kind of new cross-platform UI thing. No. I think Visual Studio Code has not got sort of visual designers for UIs baked into it, and it would be a vast amount of work to build those for Visual Studio Code. So I think people who are doing traditional desktop or even native mobile dev will probably, on the Microsoft stack, will probably still stick to Visual Studio Code for the time being. Visual Studio, sorry, for the time being. But anyone who's doing web APIs and just regular websites, I can see almost all moving over to Visual Studio Code.
Hang on, you said native mobile. Can you do either Android, iOS, or something else in Visual Studio?
Yeah, did you hear of Xamarin?
I have heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, Microsoft bought Xamarin. So,
okay.
Yeah, there's a long story here. Miguel de Casa, he made so when .NET first came out, it was Windows only, but the specs for the Common Language Runtime were open specs, and so he implemented a Linux implementation of the entire .NET framework as an open source project. It was called Mono, and Microsoft ended up buying his company, but they also used Mono for all of these tools to make Android and iOS apps. And I think the Unity project lets you code in C# for mobile devices. But now Microsoft have brought that all in house, and I think Maui. I've not really done a lot with Maui, but I think that's their new branding for all of this cross-platform stuff. So yeah, in Visual Studio, you can build iOS apps, you can build Android apps all in C#. The latest .NET is fully cross-platform, so it runs on Linux.
And do you ever do development outside of your Windows machine?
Do I do development outside of Windows?
Yeah.
So my development machine is Windows. In the cloud, I do a lot of coding for Azure. We tend to run wherever possible on Linux because Linux VMs are cheaper than Windows. And Windows.
That's fascinating to me that even in the Microsoft offerings, Linux is cheaper. I guess it makes sense.
Well, you're paying for a Windows license essentially. So yeah, we would write our .NET applications on our Windows dev machines, but then compile them for Linux and run them in Docker containers on a Kubernetes cluster, for example.
Do you cross-compile or do you compile in a container?
It's easiest to compile in a container. Windows has also got a feature called WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, which is essentially Ubuntu. I don't tend to use it because my Linux command line skills aren't that great. I tend to use, you can see I've got a PowerShell window here. Although PowerShell is also cross-platform, you can run PowerShell on Linux. So yeah, I've most of my skills over the years have been in Windows, but I'm kind of learning more and more about the Linux way of doing things.
I just love this. I love that you can install the Windows subsystem for Linux and then install PowerShell in your Windows subsystem for Linux.
Yes.
And then you can do PowerShell in your Linux in your Windows. It's amazing.
Yeah. I actually made an open source library called NAudio, which is an audio library for .NET. It's actually one of my most successful projects. It's been running for 20 years. And I made wrappers for all of the Windows audio APIs so that you could write audio programs in .NET. However, more and more people are contacting me and asking me, like, why doesn't this work on Android? Why doesn't this work on Linux? Because obviously it's just calling into OS APIs. And so I've had a lot of people pestering me to add Linux audio playback support. So I might end up having to learn that at some point.
And macOS as well. So yeah, good luck with that. It's like
I don't have any
4 platforms to support.
OS computers, so I wouldn't be able to test that. That's the trouble.
Yeah, there are some people who are in your predicament and they do use the same way that you're saying that you use development environments in the cloud and then you end up using Linux. There are some for macOS as well. And I suppose it's possible, but it's probably mildly inconvenient to do that. Yeah, all right. Thanks for the insight about the .NET ecosystem. Do you want to go back to the second part of the problem?
Yes, I'm just wondering why it's showing everything in orange. I think
it's just selected, isn't it? Is that me?
Did you select the whole text?
Yeah, somebody's copy pasted everything.
Right. It's not me.
Oh.
Well,
maybe. Oh, yeah.
It was you. Right. I was gonna say the selection looks orange, and your cursor is orange, David.
Yeah, it is me. I was in the wrong document.
All right then. So.
For some reason, my git ignore is not ignoring the things it should ignore, but I won't worry about that. I'll be able to recode this up later. So I think what we were going to say was, in fact, we don't even need to break part 1. We can just say power set sum. One thing that he can catch you out with on Advent of Code is that sometimes the numbers overflow in int 32. So I tend to make these things a 64-bit.
Well, we know for this program that's not the case because there are only 100 games. But yeah, good thinking.
Well, you're multiplying reds, green, and yeah, it probably won't, but yeah, you're going to get a fairly high number. So what we wanted to say was, I'm struggling to remember it now. We want to find the maximum number. So if you said max reds.
Well, if you want to preserve the original program, you have to rename this variable because max reds is the name I gave to the variable above on line 10.
Well, in fact, it's not even max, it's min, isn't it?
No, it is the maximum that we have actually seen, not the maximum that we a priori allow.
It means we've got at least that number in the bag, I guess.
Do we just call it reds and then just...
Yeah.
Let's split the difference.
Yeah. Naming things is hard. That's another thing that the AI assistants are supposedly going to help us with. They're going to suggest better variable names and better method names for our...
Well, they did today with the rounds versus draws.
Yes,
maybe.
That's true.
I'm gonna do a reordering here. It's gonna be reds, greens, and blues in that order.
Okay, so if this is all a bit ugly that we've got this repeated code, but no, it's guessed wrong. Sorry, AI. So reds equals dot max of reds and count.
Mm-hmm. And the rest it will be able to do pretty easily.
I'm waiting for it to suggest the changes in Visual Studio. It auto. How are you doing it? Amazing.
I almost got it
right.
It was actually copying your mistake of blue above. But anyway.
Okay, so once we've gone through each cube, have we got to go one level up?
Can I drive now? I want to write some more C++ and it's not going to be trivial C++. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, at the end of this draws, I guess we need to go one level up like you were saying.
Yes.
Same with OK, right? And then by the end of the draws, so after this, I will take my power set sum plus equals reds, greens. Oh, it's again in the wrong order. I'll fix that for us.
It's Windows. On Windows, they do RBG.
Wait, what? Are you joking?
No, I'm joking.
And that is all there is to it. Am I right?
Let's find out.
No.
What?
No, I just pressed up and I ran.
No.
What?
Sum is 8. That's all right.
No, but it's not even printing the power sum.
Really?
I think you didn't save. Oh no.
Do .NET build. It should have built it, but yeah.
Yeah, no, there is some am I in the wrong folder or something like that, right?
It's not showing a save. I've just saved it, so let's go again. .NET run. It should build it.
Yeah, it was a live code problem.
All right.
2286 was that the right answer? 2286. Yeah.
Yay.
We are.
Did we get it?
Yeah, we got it.
I can't see any potential issues.
So our final answer would have fit in an integer. What is the default number type in .NET?
Well, an int is just a 32-bit signed 32-bit int.
So when you say like here a var
So a numeric
something
would
something equals
say-
0, that's a 32-bit integer.
Yes, yes. So var's like auto in C++. Yes, but there's extensions. So the L is so a lot of that is very similar to C.
And then power set sum is a long, which is going to be a 64-bit
Yeah,
integer, signed integer, I suppose, right?
yeah, yeah. And there's also a 128-bit, and I think there's something called a big int, which is just kind of as large as you'd like to be. So
An arbitrary position. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I pasted the answer and drum roll. Submit. And that's the right answer.
Hey.
Yay! Congratulations. We have 4 stars.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Very nice.
This was, I guess, easier than yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Although,
nice that it was a fairly kind puzzle, because let's say they can be really, really tricky, these. But...
I think the hardest part of this was the VS Code live sharing. No, that was cool. Now, I guess I might run this in a REPL to get my answer, rather than implementing it in Python. I'm not sure.
What is this story like for running? I guess back in the day there was an idea of implementing the CLR in the browser so that you could run .NET natively in the browser instead of JavaScript. Is this still an idea that is floating around? Is this still a thing?
So yeah, is really interesting, they invented this thing called Silverlight, where you could write .NET applications. You could use a UI stack very similar to WPF, this kind of XAML-based language they called it. And I did loads of Silverlight. I really liked it. But then when Apple kind of killed Flash, Silverlight also died a death because it was a browser plugin. However, it's kind of made a comeback with this thing that they're calling Blazor. And what Blazor has done is really clever, actually. Essentially, it's have you heard of WASM? So it's taken the .NET runtime and made it run on WebAssembly, and that means that you can write .NET code that runs in WebAssembly in any browser. And the nice thing about it being WASM is that Apple can't kill it. It's essentially kind of native to all browsers.
They can try. Look at what they are trying to do with progressive web applications. But they will lose. The European Union will make sure that they lose.
But yeah, it's amazing what they've done with Blazor, because essentially it uses WebSockets as well. And so essentially you can write C# code that that either runs on the server or runs in the client, and can almost make real-time decisions about whether it's running on the server or client. Oh yes, yeah, the mega solutions. These are amazing. I just find the Python ones are very elegant, and so I bet you there's a Python solution quite high up that's almost one line of code.
Yeah, I want to look at that later, but I didn't want to interrupt you. So you're telling me a story that I'm invested in, because like David said, that he wanted to find a REPL to run the code and get his answer and get his stars. I was curious if he could do that by loading .NET in the browser. So it's a possibility. Is it something that people are using? Like, are people actually using this WASM compiled version of .NET, or is it like a novelty?
No, it's a full product. So the guy, Microsoft employee Steve Sanderson, who's just an amazingly talented guy, he's come up with all kinds of things. He made Knockout.js, which you might remember from back in the day. Kind of lost the war to Angular, but it was a similar.
It was probably better.
Yeah, yeah.
in
It used
hindsight.
the model view model approach to binding, which I liked. I was familiar with that from sort of desktop development, but it lost to Angular, and then of course Angular kind of lost to React. But yeah, he made it, and it was just kind of like this, wow, look at this, isn't this impressive? But I think Microsoft realized there was so much enthusiasm for it, they fully turned it into a product. And so Blazor is now, .NET 8 was the most recent release of .NET, and Blazor's kind of fully part of that now. And like I say, it's very nice because you've got this, you can either do fully client side or fully server side, or kind of have a mixture of both, and it's all powered by WebSockets. So you can have these apps that go between online and offline. But it's very appealing to companies like ours, where like the majority of our developers know C#, but few of them know front-end JavaScript. And so it's like, well, you don't need to learn a new dev stack to do front-end reactive development.
Interesting. Is this something that you use for applications that are heavy on the client side, like a photo editor, or is it something they could use on something very simple, like a like button on a blog?
I think it'd probably be overkill for a like button, but people, one of the classic demos would be like a live chat application or that kind of thing, where you have got a mixture of code that is client side and server side going on. Yeah, I've tended to be more back end in recent years, so I haven't really had a chance to play with this, and I also still feel slightly burned by Silverlight, which I invested very heavily in learning, getting taken away. So I haven't really learned Blazor, but it is quite impressive what they can do with it. And I think generally WASM, I know Leandro, you're very interested in audio programming. It's opening up a lot of really interesting doors to running all kinds of things in the browser that would have been impossible. So VST plugins, for example, actually able to run in the browser. And I've seen a number of really amazing demos of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I have looked at, just out of curiosity, that iPlug2 is able to compile plugins to run in the browser. So it's using WebAssembly, but it's also using WebGL to render. It's very cool stuff. I don't know of any major players in this. I don't know of many plugin studio that is using this to ship audio plugins to the browser. But I am a web platform person. I would love for the web platform to take over this as well. I know people are going to criticize this and say like, oh, look at Electron, it's hogging all my memory, but I want to see this happening.
And I think it will, because there are a lot of, like we use Reaper, which is very much a client, a thick client application, but a lot of the kind of the next generation of kids who are learning music, they're doing it in browser apps. And so a lot of the companies that are making these sort of very kind of simple intro DAWs like BandLab are making audio effects in the browser. And I don't know whether they're using WASM, but that's obviously one way to very quickly get a huge code base of C# C++ into your browser environment without having to port it. Because I've done porting of algorithms between languages. I've done a lot of it over the years, and it's just not fun. So yeah, if you can use existing C code and run it in the browser for audio effects, virtual instruments, that's just going to be a massive time saver.
I'm fascinated by this. So people are using it in the browser. I thought that people were using BandLab and so on in mobile apps. And that is disheartening, because I am a web person. I don't want the native mobile to win. I want my progressive web apps. I want my DAWs in the browser. All right. Yeah. So let's take a look at the solutions from other people to this problem. Ale Cuisine Oh, look at that. The first answer is in C#. And they are doing the nested regular expression that I was talking about. Check this out.
So
Yeah,
it's
so
not. Is it nested?
That's what we were saying earlier on. So that repeated block, the second parenthesized bit, that's just looking for a digit followed by a string.
Yeah.
And so, parsing it into a dictionary, which essentially is where we were going in the JavaScript solution, turning it into an object. That's essentially, JavaScript objects are dictionaries. So that's essentially what he's done.
Can you break down the syntax of there's the question colon, which I don't quite get.
That is just a capture group that I don't want to have in my results. So it's a capture group that you ignore. It will not appear in the matches. Does that make sense?
What won't appear in the matches? Because you want the inner bit to.
Yeah, I can show you real quick here.
Because he's got two levels of parentheses.
Yeah.
I think is the issue. So you just get a confusing.
So if you have this, it's gonna match, right? And in the match results, there will be this group that was captured by the parentheses. If you say this, then you're saying, okay, I'm grouping, but I don't care about the result here. I don't care about this capture, so it doesn't appear in the result. This is necessary if you want to do something like banana or avocado. And you want either the whole word banana or the whole word avocado, but you're not really interested in this. It's just part of what you need for the bigger match. So if you put it like this, it's not going to be part of the result. But if you don't have this part, then it is going to be captured in one of the results here, banana in this case. Yeah, that's all there is to it. So you can pretty much ignore it because it's not doing any heavy lifting.
Okay. And then where's the semicolon?
Right? I was thinking about that, and it is in
I guess
here.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, it's here. It's here. It's here. It's here. This is the semicolon.
Okay, but because...
I wonder why they used dot instead of semicolon. But anyway, it's here.
Well, he's...
because it's also getting the comma.
Maybe he doesn't care because we're just looking for the max of any color.
Right.
So you didn't actually need to split them up into rounds or draws.
Yeah.
You could have just gone through.
The best naming is no name.
Right. So it was not necessary to actually have the concept of multiple draws. All right. Let's see what else we have.
Can you sort it by most upvoted? Because usually that will give you like the.
I guess
like you're getting most recent. Yeah.
By top or best?
I don't know what the difference is.
Well, let's go by best. In Python, today's trick, using a default dict. What is that, David?
I love a default dict. It's just you can try and like insert stuff or add stuff. So if it's an integer, by default, whenever you access a key or try and modify a key, it will always be populated with 0 as soon as you try and access it.
So that's a way of saving one line that reads like, my dictionary equals red equals 0, green equals 0, and blue equals 0?
Yeah, okay. Or like if it's populated, then populated it with... If it's not populated, populate it with 0 first. So you can see on bag col on line 4 or whatever, there he hasn't initialized that, he's just doing it.
And the person is not even caring about the game numbers?
Yeah,
This
he's
is
just
just part
using the line
two.
number, I guess. He's
We
doing the
only
trick.
we only needed the game number for part
Ah.
one.
But this is dealing with one line, right? It's not dealing with the whole problem.
But yeah, he's just finding a number followed by a string. So the game fortunately doesn't match that.
But then you are using you split by lines, so you are using that trick of the game number is the line number.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cute. And this open is to open the standard input, so you don't have to copy and paste the inputs into the program, right? You pass the inputs through the standard input. Is that what's happening here?
Open zero. I don't know what open zero does, but yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Open is probably to open a file, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so zero
I guess.
is the file, is the number for the file handler for the standard input. 1 is
That
the
makes
standard
sense.
output, and 2 is the standard error. All right. Language, Google Sheets. But essentially, again, just regular expressions, and it is cool that it's like nested this way.
Sometimes the guy who runs it, Eric Wastel, sometimes he'll make the first few days possible, in theory at least, to achieve by someone who's not even a coder. So you could just look at your inputs and you could go through each line and you with a pencil and paper and you could calculate the answer.
Yeah, and also there are only 100 games, and this is a CSV, which will be read by your Excel, Google Sheets, and
Not
so
quite
forth.
CSV.
Well, not quite. I know you would need to
Yeah.
be a bit more clever, but you could, if you remember that the semicolon doesn't matter, you could configure the CSV to perhaps get commas and semicolons and ignore the beginning. If you can do that, if you can say, I want my splitter to be either column, comma, or semicolon, then you can ignore the first column and go from there. So it seems like possible. And I love how this language kind of looks like Lisp. If you put the parentheses in the beginning, this has the look and feel of a Lisp program. And even the capitalized names are very like early Lisp papers. I love that. Okay. All right. Yeah. It's cute that there is a substring after.
Yeah, that's nice. I might make. I've slowly built up a library of utility functions. So I've got a default dictionary because there's not one baked into C#, that I use for Advent of Code. But yeah, an extension method like that, substring after, would be nice.
You're saying that the default dictionary thing is something that you use all the time. Is it ever confusing that you don't know what the keys are gonna be a priori?
I think it's because I haven't ever needed it in real world, but for these puzzles, you quite often just want a dictionary that you don't know what the keys are going to be, and you want a default value. So a very common one later on in Advent of Code challenges is you'll often have something with coordinates. You'll have a grid, maybe 2D grid, maybe even a 3D grid. And you can fill a grid in memory. So you've got an array with an entry for every grid position. But if it's an infinite grid, or potentially infinite grid, you don't have enough memory. And so you switch to a dictionary where the key is the coordinate position and the value is whatever is at that coordinate in your grid. And so it can be really useful to have a default dictionary that I can just ask what's at this coordinate, and it doesn't say exception key not found. It just says default value.
Okay.
Yeah, and also the nesting of that, right? So you can do like 3 levels of subscripting without it throwing.
I will show you my trick for doing this, which is a bit more verbose, so less elegant, but it works nevertheless. So I'll call this my colors, and I go like this, colors, edge, and I suppose that there is something that I read from the inputs. I go like this, and then I use the knowledge coalescing operator to do this. So if the color is set, it doesn't change it, but if the color is not set, then it sets it to 0, and then I plus equals or a plus plus, for instance.
Yeah, it's not as big a deal, I think, in JavaScript. Because in JavaScript, if you ask an object for a key that's not present, it will just return none. Whereas in a lot of other languages, it will actually throw an exception, a key not found exception. And so default dictionary kind of rescues you from that situation. But yeah, that's a nice solution for JavaScript.
Now that I wrote this down, I wonder if this really works in this context. I have used this trick before, but I don't know if it works with the plus plus. So let's take a look. Nope, it doesn't like this syntax. I have used it in the past to do other things, but not exactly this. So yeah, I guess you would need to have this line in a separate line here.
Yeah.
And then it would work. Then it works, right? Right? Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I don't like that you have to do it in an extra line, though.
Yeah, in JavaScript, it's fine. It's just another extra line. That's what I found in practice. Is I'm just like, okay, I'll just do another extra line. It's okay.
Perl. Okay. This is pretty straightforward, and one realizes it's not necessary to parse the whole input line. Yeah. Wait, what? Oh, this regular expression is not only matching globally, but it's also transforming the string into a number, and max takes a list. So the regular expression itself will generate a list. Wow, you don't even have to say what you want the input to be. It's just going to match on the standard input. This is cool.
How does it? So that first while, is that like reading a line? Is that reading all the lines?
Probably.
Yeah, until you get to the end of standard input probably.
So these problems are very prone to using Perl, I guess, or maybe the other way around, Perl and AWK and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty expressive.
Yeah.
It's like it was designed for this problem, wasn't it? It's like, how would you express this problem as code? It's like that.
No, that's beautiful. APL. I love APL.
Do you?
I love the idea of all the symbols and it just looks like gibberish. I love it.
Yeah, it looks like a ciphertext.
Well, this is probably assignment. This is probably the game number. This, what would this be? Wow. It makes absolutely no sense to me, but I see multiples of that. And there is some containment here. So I guess this is probably like a while loop. And then this is probably like for every something inside of something else. Wow, this is amazing.
That's a for each loop, maybe.
Yeah. And these are probably characters that I don't have in my fonts, so they're probably not rendering, right?
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Maybe not, I don't know. Wow. Oh, you can grep.
God, I thought we were being quite exotic with C#, but now that I see this.
You can grep because the numbers are small enough. Oh,
How does
there's a
grep
math
work?
executable? What's that about? Is this a thing? No, it's not. It's probably a fish thing. Whoops, I pressed the wrong place. I turned the input into JavaScript and evolved it, which is my theme for the year. I love this. What? The person got the inputs, used some string manipulation to turn the inputs into a JavaScript program that you subsequently run into Node and get your results. So it turned the inputs from that into this using regular expression manipulation.
That's brilliant. One of the years for Wow. Code, the theme was kind of like you're building a computer and it had its own machine code instructions. And so you ended up slowly over the days implementing all of the implementations of each opcode. And then you ended up running these more and more complicated programs, some of which needed to be optimized or they'd run forever. But you found by the end of it, you could actually, it was easier for some of the problem inputs to literally do that, to just turn them into code in your language of choice and compile the input.
Well, that's amazing, because if you look really deep into what a compiler or an interpreter does, it's actually that. That's why people claim that it is straightforward to write a Scheme interpreter in Scheme, because it is a language. Scheme is a language in which the data, so your input, which is the source code for the program you want to run, the data can be turned into code, and it's, well, kind of like eval, but not really in that sense. And it has to do with like all the ways that you can pattern match and quasi-quote and that kind of thing. But yeah, in the end of the day, what you're doing when you're writing an interpreter is exactly that. You're turning the input into something that, a snippet of code that you can run in your native language. Very cool.
I like, yeah, so I think he's hidden the parsing code, yeah. But what I like about part 1 is that he's obviously got a tuple, and so he's parsed each draw into a tuple, and then you can just do the less than or equals, because it's like a vector, less than. So I think that's quite elegant.
Yeah, okay, and the parsing is what you would expect. It's nothing too out there. I don't like this. I don't find this intuitive to me. At the very least, I think that the fork should be before and not after. David, after you get used to list comprehensions, do they become natural? Because for me, they're always jarring. Yeah. They're always like, I'm reading something, this doesn't make sense. Where is this variable from? Oh, okay, it's at the end of the line. Okay.
No, you grow to definitely love them. I mean, as long as you keep it to just like one level, you don't go too many levels deep, then it becomes. But it's the same as like when you try to do like lots of things on one line. But when it's just one line, it's actually quite nice.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that the syntax is upside down. It's the same in Ruby. They have this, and I guess it comes even from Perl, where you can do like something, if condition. And then you're like, oh, okay, I need to backtrack everything that I thought I understood about the program. It's only under this condition. And then it's like, ugh.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to like ternaries in Python.
Why?
Because it's like that, but worse.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Type ternary Python, yeah.
Yeah, I really like Python. I think there's a lot of elegant stuff in there, but some of its choices are
I really
surprising.
Like Python.
The lambda's a bit funny as well.
Jeez, that is completely unintuitive for me. I mean, if you read it out in English, of course, it does make sense, but No,
Yeah.
if A less than B, then A else B. That's how I think.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, so someone was using Excel, like I mentioned. What is this?
Oh God.
Okay, so again, we are using symbols a lot. This is probably the loop. And geez Louise. Is this like incrementing?
No idea. There are quite a few ones there, to be fair.
J. Well, J was supposed to be weird like this, but this program looks okay. Oh, and this is probably piping. I'm really looking forward to piping being a thing in JavaScript. I love it. And this is F#. You did some problems in F# in the past, right, Mark?
Yeah, F# is a functional language extension to .NET. Yeah, it's really nice. It causes you to think about things in different ways. Immutability. So no adding to your total, but producing a series of numbers and then summing them up, all of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And do you use it for Advent of Code, or do you use it for your day job as well?
So I got into it by using it for Advent of Code, and I really liked it, and I tried to introduce it at work, and we tried to use it on a few small projects at work. But what I found was that if a developer doesn't understand functional programming, and it is quite a mindset shift, they'll end up trying to write regular imperative code in a functional language. And so some of the code that ended up getting written was just so, it was kind of pointless for it to be F#. It was just confusing people. So yeah, that was a bit of a failed experiment. I think F# has remained a niche language in Microsoft, even though people who like it really love it. And there are some things it's just really great for.
In the end, you have access to the same technologies underneath, the same APIs.
Yeah.
You can do all the things we talked about, from running desktop applications, web applications, even in the browser.
Yeah, it's just thinking particularly about immutability. Everything's a pure function and immutability. So your lists, you don't add something to a list. You make a new list that's got one extra item on it. So that kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
I think when you get into functional programming, it is quite amazing what it can do. But then there are some problems that are just much harder.
All right. So I think it's time for us to say our thank yous and goodbyes, and see you tomorrows. So I want to thank everyone who are here on the chat. Bo, Nick, Nod was one. I will read everything that you are saying later, but I don't think that there is anything that we needed to act on, like any experiments that you wanted to try or something like that. So
Might be cool to have the chat open in another window next time.
Yeah, I tried to do that, and then the streaming setup is getting better every day, okay? We are doing the problems, and they're gonna get harder every day. The streaming setup will get better every day. You will see. Today we have the grid. We are not just using the Skype window. That's progress. And we were able to overlay ourselves on the screen. That's progress. So tomorrow, do you know when you will be available? Or if you are available at all?
Personally, same time would be good for me.
Okay. And Mark, do you want to join us tomorrow? Do you have time constraints?
I won't be able to do tomorrow morning. I play piano at church, so I'll be playing Christmas carols tomorrow morning. So yeah, but feel free to go ahead.
All right.
I'm not sure I'll be able to commit to coming to all of these.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure if we are gonna do it every day. But anyway, I will see you again tomorrow at 10 UTC. And well, thank you very much, David, for inspiring me to do Advent of Code and for joining me on these sessions. And thank you very much, Mark, for teaching us about C# and the whole environment, not just even the problem that we worked on. It was very nice to have you.
No, thanks for inviting me. It was great fun to solve the problem with you.
All right.
Nice meeting you, Mark. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching the stream. You know how great it has been. Or maybe it sucked, and I am glad that you stuck with me. And so we'll all will be back together for some more coding or talking or chilling. The next time I'll be streaming.